In this video, we'll talk about AI agents, how they work, and what you can do with them, and where the future is likely going to be. And we'll also focus on one agent in particular, which is this Revenue Robot sales AI agent that's working on LinkedIn to help you generate icebreakers, personalized emails, and also meeting research. So it's for free right now. Here, go to the Chrome store, download it. I'll drop the link below. Without further ado, let's go. So anytime I'm on somebody's profile in LinkedIn now, the Revenue Robot shows up where I can generate icebreakers, generate emails, or even generate meeting prep. Now, why would I want to do that? Well, icebreakers to have more personalized emails, emails to have more personalized emails, but also contextually correct, knowing what is the pain point I solve for, what does my company do, what is my ideal customer profile, and so on. And meeting prep is anytime I have a meeting with a person, I want more information on their company, what's happening, news, funding, strategic initiatives, maybe roadmap, things that I should probably look up on my own, but I don't have time and I don't do it as often as I should. So I just want that prep done for me. So let's start by generating some icebreakers to see how this works. And here you can see we get some icebreakers. We get 3 alternatives. If we wanna copy it, we just click it. So just got hooked on your Growth Unhinged newsletter. It's a gold mine for SaaS growth, which you know how in go-to-market strategies, how do you juggle new ideas with the old faithfuls in such a fast-paced market. If you're not satisfied with this, you can just regenerate. So let's do another one. And here we have 3 new alternatives. Been watching OpenAI's journey. Your work with business software companies is seriously cool. How do you keep things fresh while sticking to what works in such a fast-paced field, etc. So let's generate an email. And here we have an email. Now this email does not have context into our company information, our ideal customer profile, or company description. That is something we have to add on the settings side. But let's just look at this email as it is. Hey Kyle, been keeping up with Growth Unhinged. Your take on product-led growth and SaaS benchmark is top-notch. I saw you're doing big things at OpenView, helping companies scale up. Must be a wild ride. Your approach to value add is right up our alley. We're all about not just investing, but really getting involved with our partners. So as an operating partner, got any go-to strategies for companies hitting the expansion stage? Any common trip-ups they should watch out for? Keen to know your thoughts and swap some ideas about SaaS growth. Cheers. All right, let's do a meeting prep generation. Okay, here we have meeting preparation. Company overview, quick overview, funding and financial status, recent developments, products and services, target audience. Just a very quick primer on this company. And this, we can add a lot more information on how and what we want out of our meeting prep, but this is just an example. So as you can see, a Revenue Robot is helping us a lot already. Okay, so with having said that, let's go into what are agents, how do they work in the context of AI, and for this specific Google Chrome extension, what does the workflows look like? Okay, let's go. So the AI agent we're going to be discussing today is Revenue Robot. Revenue Robot is an agent, if you want, in the form of a Chrome extension that helps me on LinkedIn with sales and ultimately helps it make a little bit easier to generate revenue. Why? Because I use it to create personalized icebreakers and very thoughtful and personalized emails that I can use as a draft, or if they're really, really good, I can use them right off the bat. I also built a generate meeting preparation workflow because a lot of the times I feel like I don't have enough context on the person and the company I'm meeting with, and I don't have enough time, or I don't take enough time anyway, to do thorough research. So I built it into Revenue Robot. And I mean, the promise of AI agents and workflows with AI is huge, right? You've probably heard it all the time, AI this, agent that, yada yada, right? It's really exciting, but it's also can be quite tiresome. So before I go into the workflow as a Revenue Robot, I want to take a step back and I want to talk about what are agents, how can we think about AI in practical terms, and I'm not meaning technically, but conceptually, that makes this a little bit easier to understand and think about not only where we are now, but where it's likely to go next, and maybe how it fits into your day-to-day job or professional life or just life in general. Because, I mean, AI is not a trend that's going away. It's not a hype, even if it's technically or potentially hyped. I mean, this is the thing happening right now in terms of technological progress and change. So if you don't have your ear to the ground here, you should. So put down your head and put the ear to the ground. But maybe before you do that, please subscribe to this channel. Click the bell for more videos like this. All the usual stuff. Let's do it. Okay. So first of all, how to think about LLMs. So in my view, LLMs are reasoning machines. They have all the world's knowledge embedded in them. And I mean, that is a caveat to that, because of course it's not all the world's knowledge, because there are some knowledge, and a lot of knowledge actually, that is hidden behind paywalls, or that is specific or private to organizations, or it's similar things, right? So all public knowledge are embedded in these models. And second thing is, it's also all public knowledge up to a point, so whatever the cutoff is. But for all intents and purposes, if you don't have a super specific use case, you can just say that all the world's knowledge is embedded in these LLMs. But again, important that you know the caveat here. So I'm not sure who said this, but I remember it because I think it's profound in this scenario. Given that you have all the world's knowledge in the AI models, you just have to figure out how to ask or instruct the AI to extract that knowledge or get what you want. So I think that's very powerful and a nice way to think about it. And also, it helps you understand the power of a good prompt, or the power of clearing good instructions for the workflow and for the output you're trying to generate or get out of it. And more than that, these models are now also reasoning engines, and they need context. So what I mean by that is that they can actually reason given an instruction and given a context, and they can also plan. And this is, a huge part of agents, and we'll come into that. But again, they need context, and they need very, very, very careful instructions. So context is, the data you send in your prompts or however you do it, and instructions are, okay, what to do with this data and what type of output are you wanting to are you aiming to have based on this input. So you can have 0 shot, no examples. You have few shot, number of examples, or you can fine tune, where you actually fine tune a version of the model with a bunch of examples on the input output relationship you want. But the main point here, I think, is that LLMs are limited by their context, and the quality is increased by the quality of instructions, right? Quality of input equals quality of output. So there is a one-to-one correlation or causation between the quality of your input and quality of your output. A simpler way to say this is, if you have shit in, you're gonna get shit out, all right? So this really applies. But as the contexts and the context windows of the AI models expand, the task or tasks at which they can excel will expand as well. And I think this is really important. But first of all, when are these models most useful? Well, I mean, if you can write a standard operating procedure or an SOP and explain to a team member or somebody in text how to perform a task, where to go and get the right data for the task, and what output you're expecting, then very high probability that AI will be able to do it. And a way to phrase that is to say that task that checks these boxes have a very high exposure to AI. Doesn't mean it'll get taken away completely by AI. It means AI can, with a high likelihood, do this very well. Again, depending on context, depending on the quality of output needed, and so on and so forth. But let's break this down into different use cases. So, very generalized, but these large language models are good at 3 big things. Generation, you generate an output based on an instruction. So anything like write me a haiku about potatoes dancing in the tropical sun, whatever, it's going to generate. Transformation, Huge one, right? Take one set of data, turn it into another format. Maybe you take unstructured text, like a phone call transcript, user feedback, and you turn it into structured data. So let's say a JSON, an HTML, encode, instructions, anything, right? So you can take data of type A and turn it into data of type whatever, right? And then compilation and compression. So you could, for example, summarize. You can abstract things from large pieces of text and make those into smaller things or more compressed things. So you can compile a lot of data into their essence. So in general, you can take a variety of data, instructions, context, which is this nice little blurb in the middle, and you get your output. So these big use cases are when LLMs are most useful. So maybe this is vague to you, maybe it isn't, but the point is, any task that can be broken down into a set of clear instructions, and that can be executed on a computer has a huge AI exposure. And that means an agent will be able to do it. Agents are a collection of steps in a workflow that has a form of output or a number of outputs. And that workflow has been steered by some form of user, or it's part of a more semi-autonomous system where the workflow might have been executed on its own. So, for example, an agent could have access to tools. A tool could be things like search. For example, a user can say, I want research about X. Then the agent has maybe one step where it breaks down the user query into a number of search queries. It searches those on Google, it takes the top results, it scrapes all those results, it puts that in the input context together with the instruction and the original user query, and it outputs and generates a response. That is an agent that has search as a tool. Then you can have functions, which are other tools. And essentially any API, so any application programming interface that is public facing, you can build an agent with. So any program can talk with any other program. And if you have a clear logical workflow where A happens, so then B should happen, that is also something that AI agents can do. So prompting plus context plus tooling such as APIs. And the sky's the limit here, right? There are APIs for everything. And then you have, and of course, chained prompts and data pipelines is part of all agentic workflows to some extent. So in the search example that I just gave, you have a chain prompt. So you have a user query input. So I'm talking about this now, chain prompts and data pipelines. I'm just jumping around because that's how my brain works. Chain prompts and data pipelines. So you have a user input. For example, I want to learn about the metallic bearing industry in the maritime sector, whatever. And you turn that query with the help of AI, and you generate likely queries that someone would try to Google when they want to do research like this. So that is a chain prompt. So we do user input, we do that prompt, then we take the output of that prompt, we extract it so we have different queries, and then we do another prompt, which is, or in this case, an execution of a tool, which is search, and so on. So the first thing that happens can be built on by different prompts. So for example, you could say, you can have another workflow with the same example. Okay, we have research, metallic bearings, and the maritime sector, and we can have another AI that should figure out, okay, based on our user here and what they just input, what type of content are they likely to want us to create? Like there's a bunch of research, but it sounds like maybe this is like corporate finance, you're looking to do a deal in the sector. And then you could have, for example, an intermediate step where you put out likely responses that the user would like. And you can use that later down the line when you generate the output to say, okay, based on what we think, here's how that output can be formatted. And then we have RAG, which is essentially just a way to get context. RAG, if you haven't seen already from my one of my later videos, it's retrieval augmented generation. Very fancy way to say we have a database, we pull out things from that database, put it in the context, But the way we pull out the data from the database is that we look at what we want to have. So for example, if it's a question, we look at that question, we look at all the data in our database and say, okay, these snippets of data seem to be the most similar to what we're asking. That is called semantic similarity. It happens in vector databases, which is essentially numerical representations of words and of language. Very neat. So what happens is that you are all of a sudden not only limited by context windows, but with RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generation, you can also pull data from a vast data source, but you pull the data that is most probable to be similar to what you asked for or the task you're trying to accomplish. And closely connected to chain prompts is also meta prompting. So you could also ask an agent, or in a step of an agent, you could ask the AI to write a prompt for the tasks that you want to do, or to even imagine a number of tasks that you want to do and write prompts for them, and so on. So this is very like fractal, right? You could, once you have the building blocks of this, you could take it as granular as you like, and you can just build like Legos, 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps, 4 steps. So that's what I mean with, if you can write it down in clear instructions, have a standard operating procedure, and define an output and expectations. And if you could just sit down and draw that with logic, step by step by step by step, chances are you could build an agent that does this. And what else? Yes, reasoning and planning, part of meta prompting and chain prompts. But given that we have models now that are able to reason and plan and think things through step by step, we could use this to steer workflows, meaning we can have semi-autonomous workflows, and we can even have autonomous workflows where the actual first start, let's say the query in the search example we gave, is an agent that reasons and plans. And this can be done in each step of an agentic workflow, in intermediate steps, or anywhere really. But it's important to know that that is a capability that the AI has. So as long as you have it isolated, and I think clear, with clear boundaries and clear task expectations, and an output, or at least a goal that you want to reach, this works really well. Multi-agent is, I think, very similar to chain prompting. It's just that the unit is not a prompt, but the unit is an agent. So agent in this case being defined as a collection of steps, a workflow that you could call in an API endpoint. So there are a lot of frameworks for this. I'll mention one later on. But multi-agent, so meaning different type of setup workflows with different goals that can actually work together. So again, I just think of those as bigger Lego blocks consisting of smaller Lego blocks. But essentially, yeah, you have different workflows that are built with AI. We're calling it agents. I mean, we could as well call it workflows. All right, so that's it. I'm sure you have a bunch of questions here. Happy to dive deeper here, but I think that's a good overview. And I think also it forms the picture that, okay, it's just a bunch of ways to work with the underlying capabilities, like context, a lot of data and instructions and goals. And that's why I wanted to talk about that first, because a variety of data output and goals, tasks, instructions, because when you think about it like that, all of this it's not that complicated conceptually anyway. It's just step by step. Okay, so what drives agentic AI performance? Why have we seen a surge in AI agents? Every day I see YouTube videos and people posting and so on and so forth. Many things, right? But I think the main 3 things is we have increased context length. And as you remember, or as I hope you remember, LLMs are limited by context. As their context expands, the tasks at which they can excel will expand as well. That is what is happening. We have increased context length. The latest, or one of the latest models from Anthropic called Haiku has, I think, 200,000 tokens context length. That is hundreds and hundreds and probably hundreds of pages of data or text that you could just send in one single prompt. Now, just imagine. I mean, the difference between that and like the 4,000 context window we had a year ago, or whatever it was, maybe 1.5. I mean, this increase is fast and it's big. And I think people are still sleeping on the changes. I mean, you're probably familiar with ChatGPT. I'm not sure how deep into this you are, but if you haven't tried, and if you aren't aware of that, the Haiku model is not only a huge context window with 200,000, but also probably one of the cheaper models. I think you're sleeping on it. So check that out. Increased context length. And together with that, I mentioned it already with the Haiku model, lower prices. So prices are being lowered at a very rapid rate, and I expect this to continue. There's a lot of competition in the foundational model space. OpenAI probably has the throne, although Opus from Anthropic is actually deemed better from experience, or people's experience with it. So, and there are other players as well, right? We have Cohere, we have Mistral, other open source players. We will see where the winner sort of comes from. But what is clear is that price pressure, downward price pressure is happening. The foundational models are more and more becoming a commodity, meaning they're easily available, they're easier to train, they're cheaper to train, with few exceptions. Like if you're looking at the absolute state of the art, there are only a few. If you have other smaller use cases, specific use cases, you could probably just go with an open source and fine tune that, and you'll be good, you'll be great. But the general trend is lower prices and better performance in combination. And that leads me into the third driver, which is increased model capabilities. So, I mean, it's not enough that we have a bigger context length and lower prices, but we also have increased model capabilities, meaning better reasoning, better planning, better understanding of instructions and goals. So these three things together are really giving a rise, or the drivers behind all these agent stuff that you see being talked about all the time. And I think it's very likely, and I know there have been some rumors that OpenAI, and maybe they even said it out, explicitly. I'm not sure, but OpenAI is very likely going into the agent road. So I think their next big release is probably going to be like a general AI agent that can do stuff for you on the web. I mean, why not? They're a very good position to do it. It seems like they want to grab a lot of pieces of the pie with the GPT store and so on. So we'll see where they go. But I think, AI agents is going to be sort of the next wave, even more broadly. In terms of people just using ChatGPT, it'll be more of an agent. Okay, so what happens? And I put this here again. LLMs are limited by the context. As the context expands, the tasks at which they can excel will expand as well. And we're missing... it can be like that. Okay, so this is what is happening. And I just said this. I'm just going to illustrate it now. Context windows up and to the right. Inference prices per millions of tokens, meaning prices in general. This is just the unit. Down and to the right. Model capabilities up and to the right. This is a huge combination of drivers that is just increasing the velocity of the whole field, but agents in particular right now. Maybe we won't call them agents. Maybe we'll just say AI at some point, and at least be the standard use case. Because again, I think a little bit, I think agents are silly. It's sort of a transient term. When you really think about it, but we have to call it something. So why not an agent? Sounds cool to, I guess, some people. And what happens? I've said this many times, I'm gonna say it again. Agents can become more competent. More tasks have AI exposure, meaning they can be done partly or probably completely by AI. So what's gonna happen? AI wielding productivity, meaning productivity as a result of AI at an organizational level, at an individual level, and probably also at a societal level. The productivity by wielding AI is going through the roof, up and to the right. And what happens when productivity goes up? And what happens when anybody can use great models at very low prices with very large context windows to generate ideas, code, images, and do this in sequence? Well, what happens is that the marginal cost of a lot of things is going down rapidly. So the marginal cost of code and many other creative tasks is going down. I think marginal cost of code is going towards zero. It's not going to go to zero, but just the generation of code, the marginal cost is completely collapsing. And what does that mean? It means that it's easier than ever to build things. More people than ever have access to tools that can build beautiful products, which means we'll have a bunch more products. We'll have bigger products. We'll have products that didn't even make sense before because the economic model has changed. The unit economics of a digital asset or product has changed because the marginal cost of code has gone down and the productivity has gone up. So what does all this lead to? It leads to huge increases in competition in the digital realm. So let's take software products, for example. If that weren't competitive enough, that is going to go through the roof. Because the same teams, the teams with the size A now will have huge productivity gain. The marginal cost of code will go down. So it's not that people won't hire. I mean, in general, people will probably hire fewer developers, for example. But it's also the case where, and this is why productivity goes up, you have the same amount of developers. You might be paying less on average because the marginal cost has gone down, but the productivity will be through the roof. And the competition will increase. And what happens when the competition increases and the marginal cost of production goes down and productivity goes up? Well, prices go down. So there will be a downward pressure, I am sure, on prices of more or less every single digital good that is coming out. I mean, again, I'm generalizing, and this is a trend. It's not an isolated example, but this is for sure going to happen. So who gets the value in all this? And this is a conversation that I think is missed a lot. I don't see enough people speaking about this because I think a lot of us are just caught up in the amazing things you can do with the technology and the user experience you can build. But from an economic perspective, I mean, where is this going? And this is still, the jury is still out here, right? It's not like somebody knows, but you can guess and you can look at historic examples. So what usually happens when productivity goes up, when marginal cost of production goes down and competition goes up, well, it means supply goes up. And if demand, goes up less than supply in relative terms or stays the same, you have lower prices. And who gains from that? Well, consumers in general. So, I mean, as a consumer, you could have increased salary, but you can also have decreased prices, which has the same effect, right? And that is what's going to happen with digital goods. We're going to have better products, faster products, more products, and they're going to be relatively cheaper, both for us as consumers individually, but as companies as well. So a huge question is what's going to happen to the profits? There is a great example from the loom. When the loom came during the Industrial Revolution and people went crazy, started buying up looms. And when I say people, I meant like really the producers of these textile goods, let's say, because I don't know exactly what they produce, but textile goods, probably a fair way to speak about it. So they thought, okay, let's buy a lot of looms. Our productivity is going to be like 5x, and we're going to have like 5x or whatever adjusted profit. We're going to reap so much more profit because with the same amount we can do, with the same amount of input and labor and all of that capital, we could do 5x more. Or alternatively, we can have less labor and less capital and do the same, which means increased profits. But what ended up happening is that everybody saw this. Everybody did the same. Everybody bought more looms. Productivity went up everywhere. So what happened? Well, more looms meant more production of textile goods, which means a increase in supply of the good, and demand didn't change as much. What happens? Competition up, prices down, consumers happy. Why? They can buy the same or even better textile goods for lower or prices relatively lower than before. So the value did not accrue in the profits of the producers. The value did accrue at the consumer seat and at the societal level, right? More people had access to the textile fabrics at lower prices or more fair prices. And I mean, I should say fair because that's subjective, but lower prices. And this I think this is exactly what's going to happen with AI. So I think a lot of venture capital firms and a lot of investors and a lot of people in general are excited about all the things that AI will enable us to do, with the framework in mind that we will have more productivity, it'll cost less to produce, so the profits will increase. And that will happen in many situations. And I mean, there's the counterexample of Klarna, Swedish company. They replaced 700 customer support agents with their own AI model, saved like $40 million or euro maybe on the cost side, and increased profit with the same. So that's one example. But that over time, also when all functions will do the same, this is going to be a trend that holds true, and it's going to be more similar to the Loom example. So have that in mind when you see all these isolated examples, and also remember that we are in the early days, very early days. So this is how I see it playing out. Going to be very interesting to go back to this in a couple of years, or maybe, I don't know, 5-10 years, and see what happened. Maybe it's completely wrong, but I think this is going to happen. And I think it's going to be a net positive for society. So as consumers in aggregate is our society, right? So I think this is a net good for society. Will there be job displacement? Yes. Will there be job automation? Yes. We'll see what happens, right? But these fundamental economic dynamics should still hold true. Okay, so let's go to building our AI sales agent. So I'm going to be now going through the different workflows that I built out. And again, I'm going to show you the agent. And by the way, it is currently free to use. I'll drop the link to the Chrome extension here. Happy to see you use it, gain some of that productivity, ultimately drive more revenue. And I'm also very curious to hear your feedback on the extension itself, because like I said, with these Legos, you could just build more and more Legos, and you can build it into a huge tower. So what I'm trying to say is everything is possible here. So if you have an idea of how I could make this more valuable for you with a specific workflow that other people also likely will find valuable, I'm happy to do so. But I need some motivation. I need your feedback. So if you have that, please use it. Please give it to me. The following broadcast has been paused for a public announcement. Yes, it's me again, interrupting my own video. I just want to say, if you made it this far, you're probably very interested in building new things and building out digital assets and digital products. And if you want to learn to do so using no-code tools like Bubble and leveraging the AI that we now have, the AI workflows, the foundational models, everything that's happening in ultra speed, you're welcome to join my course. As you can see, around 4 hours, 20 lessons on Bubble alone. I'm gonna walk you through going from zero to hero with Bubble, the no-code platform, how to think about design in a way that's very easily to grasp conceptually, so you can build essentially any type of interface, how to think about data models when you structure your Bubble apps, how to actually build workflows in your Bubble apps, how to build user onboarding flows, user logging flows, how to also set up Stripe for payments so that you could potentially, get those payment notifications as you sleep and just wake up to people paying for the value that you bring to them with your apps or with your digital products. And I also have a session on AI and how to use AI with Bubble or really any other type of platform, because it all works with APIs, right? Application Programming Interfaces. Sign up, go to avalonlabs.co. Sign up here, the Bubble Fundamentals course. It's $99. It's insane value at this price. It's just a steal. I will raise the prices 100%, but I'm not sure when. So if you're at all interested, grab this now. And I'm happy to see you on the other side. All right, back to the video. Ciao. Okay, so again, 3 different parts of the agent here, and I'll go back to it. 1, generate icebreakers. 2, generate emails. 3, generate meeting preparation. Okay, why generate icebreakers? Well, because people are bombarded with messages all the time. If you don't have personalization, if you don't sound human, you're not going to be, any good at outreach. But there are a million tools like these that just use AI and prompting and so on. And what makes this different? What makes this better? I think there are a few. I think there's mainly 2 things that I'm doing that more people should be doing that actually increases the quality of the output a lot, and I'll get back to it in a second. The same is true for generate email. The difference between the email and the icebreaker is that the email has more context and a richer body than just an icebreaker. And then meeting preparation I built because, okay, I could go to Google, I could go to the LinkedIn company page, I could look at the company's news and what's happening, strategic initiatives, roadmap, etc., and just crystallize that information in my head and write something down and then have the meeting. But I don't do that, and it's not only because I'm usually I do it, but I want to do it more methodically. And I ultimately, it would be great to have like an assistant that did this for me and just gave me the research before a meeting. So that is what I built here. I built my own AI agent assistant that just generates meeting preparation directly on LinkedIn and the Chrome extension, and also sends that to me as an email with the research. So things like, what is this company, what's their funding, what's the news, what's happening, things that I want to know in the meeting. So I know, so I have the context with whom I'm speaking to and what's going on at their company. So I'm going to go through the workflows now, and you'll understand that it's all just context and instructions and meta prompting in some cases and so on. So the generated icebreakers, what happens is we click generate icebreakers, and ultimately we get 3 different icebreaker alternatives out. And here's what the workflow looks like. I click generate icebreakers. I scrape the entire LinkedIn profile of the person, the LinkedIn profile of the person I'm visiting on LinkedIn. I also scrape the person's company's LinkedIn profile. I take all the relevant information from both of those, and I put that as a context in another API call to an AI model. And I'm using GPT-4 normally. You could also use Opus from Anthropic. You could use whatever you like. They're interchangeable, which is great. But then I'm using all that context with a long and carefully crafted prompt for first output. And I'll show you the prompt later on if you're interested in it. But a long and carefully crafted prompt. Actually, I'll show you the prompt now. I'll do like an edit and we're going to do the prompt. But the point of the prompt is it's carefully crafted for a very specific use case. I'm giving it maybe not guardrails, but frameworks. I'm giving it heuristics. I'm giving it a mission. I'm giving it expected output. I'm giving it things to avoid. And then I'm generating 3 different alternatives. Or actually, I think I'm generating more, maybe 8 different alternatives of icebreakers for this person. And then I have another AI that looks at all these alternatives, and it has another set of instructions and expected output. And it rates the AI itself on the metrics or the parameters I've already set up in that prompt. The AI rates all the alternatives and give me the top 3. I then take the top 3 alternatives and I run those alternatives through a humanizer phrasing. And I'll explain what that is in a second. But as you probably have seen with AI, the AI just vanilla is pretty shitty at writing, I would say. It uses words that people don't use, like delve, and that's the only one I'm coming to my mind. But it uses a lot of words that people naturally don't use when they speak. And of course, I try to counteract that in this step with, this is, don't write this, you should write like this, not like this. And it takes you a long way. But what takes you even better is if you have another framework where you can exemplify how you want your things to look like, and you can use that as a filter or a transformation step to take what's already better because of those instructions here and make it even better with another round. So that is what I'm doing here. I'm saying, okay, this is great. And I'll summarize this prompt for you. Okay, this is great, but this is not how people talk. And I want you to write like people talk. Here are like 5 examples. Now I want you to run each example through my is this how people talk workflow, and just output this how people talk. And then you'll see it is much more human. And you have dials to turn here, right? You have, of course, the biggest dial I think is the prompt. I've been saying that all the time. and another dial is the temperature and so on. So you can always change this up, but the framework itself and the way to think and set this up, it means that the icebreakers I get is better than, and again, I am biased because I built it for myself, but to my mind, they are better than any other AI tool in this space I've tried. And I think the only reason for that is because I've spent more time on quality and prompting and adding different steps based on a very specific type of output that I want, something that I would likely respond to. So I don't want people to think that AI wrote this. And there are some giveaways, of course, but again, if you're 80% there, and you're doing this at scale, it's very powerful. And I'm happy. It would be great if there's another one, another version of icebreakers or things like this that is performing much better, because then obviously there's something I'm not doing that I should be doing, and I'm 100% sure there is. But anyway, this general workflow gives great results. And again, you have dials here, you have dials here, you have dials here. You can add more steps, you can do all sorts of crazy things, but it's not just, the point is here, it's not just here's data, give me this, and you're happy with the first response. You should never be happy with the first response. Make the AI work, challenge it, take the result, wrangle it again, do some things. I mean, you could do this 100 times. I could have like 10 steps of rating and ultimately have like the perfect icebreaker in this case. But it'll still be limited by the context. So yeah, context and prompt, huge dials. Context, prompt, plus model performance, huge dials. Then you can get fancy and have RAG and all this stuff, but essentially I think that's it. I think like 80% of the power of AI is the right context and the right prompt. So if you do that, and you'll do that by experimentation and being creative. If you'll do that, you'll be off to the races, and you can probably build anything if you pair it with good pipelines and all of that. Okay, 2, same thing, exactly the same thing, but with email. Now, what's the difference between the generate icebreaker, the generate email? There are 2 things that are different. 1, I'm only generating 1 email, not a variety of emails. 2, I am injecting more context on who I am, what we do, who we serve, and what pain points we solve for. So I'm giving company description, ideal customer profile, and pain points you solve to be able to write an email that is much more on point than just a general email. And you're also able to say, what is the goal of this email? Like, what do you want to do? And again, we run that also through the humanizer phrasing, which I just explained. And then we have the meeting preparation. And here you could build this however fits you the best. I've just made a fairly simple but very effective meeting preparation that I use now for all my meetings. So what I do is I have a meeting, I go into the LinkedIn profile, I click generate meeting prep, and I get the meeting preparation right on my LinkedIn, but I also get an email with the preparation, so I can just open up my email should I like. And what it does is that it takes a lot of context, a long and careful prompt, and it gives me a summary. And the key here in this case is the context. So this is sort of an agent, because what we're doing is, again, we're scraping LinkedIn profile and company, LinkedIn personal profile and company profile. That's an API, so that's a tool if you like. We're using search, so we're doing queries on company news and company roadmap and company initiatives, etc. from Google. We're taking the top results from all those searches, and then we're scraping all the data, all the textual data from those websites. Then we're putting all of that, like a lot of context, right, into a long and a carefully crafted prompt, and we send it off to the AI model. We ask for a specific output, and I get the meeting research prep on the company and on the prospect. And it saves me a bunch of time, like, I don't know, 15 minutes per click maybe. And of course, not only time, but also energy and focus. So I love this one. Probably my favorite because it saves me so much time. And that is really it when it comes to these workflows. So I'll give you a short demo again, and I'll drop the link to the Chrome extension here below. But this is really exciting times. And I think if you haven't already, you should start using AI in this way. Think about, is there something you can build for yourself? And again, happy to have your feedback. I also want to know what you find interesting and what you want to hear more about. Until next time, have a good one.